Welcome in to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thank you for joining us. This is the free weekly newsletter published every weekend on MMAcycles.com by financial analyst and astrologer Ray Merriman, the man who basically co-created financial astrology and has been doing this for 50 years. And by the way, who I had the privilege of narrating the Forecast 2025 audiobook, which goes into a lot of what's going on in the world, even right now. Is it too late to get it? No, not at all. Pick it up at MMAcycles.com, or there's a link right at the top of hightimelinebooks.com. And by doing so, you'll help support the podcast as well, and we both appreciate it. Let's dive into this week's newsletter. This is published for the week beginning Monday, January 13th. But as always, taking a look back before we look forward. And Friday was the big economic news of the week. Here's an article from CNBC on Friday. Job growth was much stronger than expected in December, likely providing the Federal Reserve less incentive to cut interest rates this year. Non-farm payrolls surged by 256,000 for the month, up from 212,000 in November and above the 155,000 forecast from the Dow Jones Consensus. The unemployment rate edged down to 4.1%, a tenth of a point below expectations. Stocks plunged after the report, while the Treasury yields soared as traders price in a lower probability of Fed rate cuts this year. And from Dr. Paul Donovan from UBS, he said this week to his team, the Federal Reserve meeting minutes reflect the rather chaotic swings of view that occur under Fed Chair Powell. After an emergency rate cut without an emergency in September, the Fed has moved to slowing the pace of rate cuts being appropriate in December. The basic idea is unchanged: follow inflation down. Concerns were raised about the U.S. President-elect Trump's trade tax and deportation policies in discussions about inflation, he said. Now, Ray's commentary for this week, he says it was another case of good news on the economy being bad news for the stock market. Reports of a stronger economy mean central banks will find it difficult to justify their plans to lower interest rates, and the stock market doesn't like the idea of rising rates. Hence, due to the excellent jobs report data, U.S. stock markets fell hard to their lowest point in 2 months. The inflationary implications of the job report, however, were very good for gold, silver, crude oil, and other commodities. Gold soared to $27.35 on Friday, which is well above the $26.08 level of December 30th, and an intermarket bullish divergence signal to silver, which had fallen to a 3-month low then. We like it when gold leads silver from a major or primary cycle low. Crude oil also exploded last week, soaring to an intraday high of $77.86, a new 3-month high. This is also not surprising now that Saturn turned direction on November 15th in the middle of Pisces. Pisces rules crude oil, and Saturn in the middle of Pisces can indicate the reversal of low prices around that time. Everyone thinks oil prices will come down when Donald Trump takes office and initiates his Drill Baby Drill campaign promise. The idea is that increasing the supply of oil will bring down prices and hence also bring down inflation. However, cycle studies indicate that it may not work out quite that way for a while. Bitcoin fell to $91,262 on Thursday, January 9th, a retest of its December 30th multi-week low. We now know where support is, but can it get back above 100,000 before breaking that new level of support? Under the retrograde chaos discussed in the next section, there will likely be more uncertainty and fake-outs than usual for a few more weeks yet. Just when you think it's safe to take a position, the conditions and the chart patterns change. Knowledge is a wonderful attribute to possess as a trader. Patience and/or the ability to act quickly may be more valuable in a retrograde climate. The norm is not the norm in a retrograde storm. Now, the short-term geocosmics and longer-term thoughts. First, a line from his play Faust from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Nothing is predetermined. Human effort can change things. You have agency. You were given a brain for a reason. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And this from Yuval Noah Harari, from Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI, published last year by Random House. Why are we so good, he wrote, at accumulating more information and power, but far less successful at acquiring wisdom? And from earthsky.org this past week, on January 12th, Mars will be the closest to Earth for its 2-year period. Now Ray's comments. It is with great sorrow that we witness the devastating wildfires destroying so many homes, schools, businesses, and lives in Southern California this past week. The cost to rebuild will be enormous for both insurance companies and individuals who cannot afford or even get fire insurance on their homes prior to this outbreak. In an effort to understand this from a cosmic point of view, let's begin with the awareness that the study of astrology assigns Mars rulership over fires and heat. Mars has an orbit of nearly 2 years and will reach its closest distance to Earth in that 2-year orbit this week, on Sunday, January 12th. Additionally, the Sun and Mars will be in opposition, with the Earth in between the two, on January 15th and 16th. And I'll just throw another note in that we'll be talking about on the Fun Astrology podcast on Monday, and that is that Mars is also out of bounds. So this truly is a Martian beginning to the new year. Furthermore, Mars is also retrograde. The date's December 7th through February 23rd. That behaves much like a Mercury retrograde in terms of market activity and mundane matters. In fact, we are presently in a retrograde chaos period, where all the personal planets, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, will undergo their retrograde cycles back-to-back between November 25th, 2024, and April 12th, 2025. This is rare. It indicates a challenging time for investors and position traders as markets can fluctuate wildly in a short time, breaking support and resistance along the way, only to suddenly reverse again in a fake-out. Yet it can be very profitable for aggressive traders who are nimble and apply the axiom that all traders must follow: maximum profit potential with minimum market exposure. So, how is one to approach a period when Mars and personal planetary retrograde cycles are so prominent? It is a time to cultivate strategies, but not to initiate them. It is a time to gather information and begin to make plans, but not the best of times to enact those plans or strategies. With Mars retrograde, the initiator of an aggressive act is usually the loser. Mars is not only the god of fire, but also the god of war. When retrograde, people are easily offended and triggered to react, especially with Mars now in the emotional and protective sign of Cancer. This is not a time to be a bully or to allow oneself to be bullied. There will be several cases of bullies on the loose now, as well as those who are critical in nature with no solutions to offer for what they perceive to be legitimate complaints. So ignore them. Don't seek to challenge them. On the investment side, Mars in Cancer may be bullish for precious metals and other commodities, which tend to rally when bullies are on the loose and given to saber-rattling and pointing out wrongs about you or about life. Rise above it. Don't react and try to explain with logic. The markets and most people may not be logical right now. They may be more emotional. Don't trade by logic and with a view to the distant future. Instead, consider trading in 2 to 8 day increments or swing trades. Leave your core positions alone and perhaps consider writing calls against them for income after sharp rallies during this retrograde chaos. That's it for this week's newsletter. A lot going on. We'll be back on Monday on Fun Astrology to talk about all of that, including both Mars, Mercury, and the Moon being out of bounds. So join us for that. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you back on Monday.